very much again for participating in this. And I would love to start hearing from you about your trajectory, what you have to say about your the whole great thing you build with your style of conducted improvisation.
Oh, I don't know where specifically to focus, but I can say I started. I am originally a drummer and a composer, and I studied classical conducting just for learning how to conduct musicians on the studio as a way of getting the sound I wanted as a composer and producer in the studio. So I didn't really expect to become a conductor, but I am very much into the rhythmic part of music. That is I would say the center of my life. Is not even the conducting, but it is really the rhythm as a subject. And then composing. So I always spent my life trying to understand how rhythm works and how the music that I love works in the rhythmical aspect. So I had the very good luck to do many trips as a kid and as a young student of music. So I went to Brazil many times, and also to Uruguay and to India and Morocco and many other places. And everywhere on this context, I saw that the percussion was, I would say, the center of the community in the sense that in all these cultures, mainly in Black cultures, but not only in Black culture, percussion and rhythm are a way for people to get together, to dance, and to feel like a whole body, like to make that community a body, to materialize community into bodies, dancing, rhythm. So I was always interested in that thing, how that works. Not only the music that makes that possible, but also the kind of space that makes that possible, the kind of culture, the kind of relations between the people and the music. And so I arrived to some conclusions, to some thoughts. Buenos Aires is not a city where I live. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and it's not a city with a great Black culture, or not even a great rhythmic culture. The popular music in Buenos Aires, all times it used to be tango, but now it's really just a cosmopolitan city where we listen more or less all kind of Occidental music. But there is a rhythmic tradition very strong coming from Buenos Aires. So in Buenos Aires, there is no such a thing as a Olodum or Mangueira in Rio, or any kind of percussive school that all the people feels that those rhythms are their rhythms and they can learn it and then can play and they can dance, and it's their music, it's their expression. So we don't have a percussive music that represents Buenos Aires way of being. And I was kind of jealous of that. I felt some envy because in Brazil, like you have in so many different cities, their own specific expressions in rhythmic music. And of course, in all other countries that have this percussive tradition. So I always thought, and how would be a possibility? How could I help to have something in Buenos Aires that represents us in the rhythmic aspect, and that can bring people together in the same space to dance, to feel that that we are a community. And I realized it in all these trips as a composer. I was interested on transcribing all the little parts of rhythmic parts of every ensemble, like a Afro block in Bahia, like Olodum or Ileaye or any of those. I would go there and just transcribe every line of the different instruments and try to understand how they lock together. Why is that they sound so good, and why it is so nice to dance with that, and why we can listen to that over and over for 2 hours and don't get bored. So I got to this thought that I think I now kind of understand why is that. I have my own claves theory, rhythmic claves, and my own rhythmic theories that I use to analyze music and to compose music, and I use also to conduct music in real time, like what we do with conducted improvisation. So those are theories like just like harmony. You have the functional theory, or the harmonics theory, or serialism, and you have many ways to think harmony, but there are not so many ways to think rhythm in the universal aspect, in the abstract aspect. We always learn rhythm from traditions, by oral tradition. We listen to the master and we try to imitate until we get it right, and then we can teach it and we can play it. So it's very good, but it doesn't allow you to go further than that, because it's not an abstract tool. It's not a tool that you can use for other things. It's just a tradition that you have to learn and repeat, and then you can innovate, of course. So I have been always interested on those tools, conceptual tools to understand rhythm. And at some point, I thought that a way to do in Buenos Aires such a group, such a project that could add this community value to percussion in Buenos Aires, I thought that it could be based on improvisation instead of tradition, because we don't have that tradition. But I know, as an improviser, I have been all my life an improviser. I have played percussion and drums, and I have participated in many projects where there was from 100% improvisation to 0% improvisation, let's say, if that can exist. So I know that improvisation is a way to be present, is a way to be awake, it is a way to be very genuine, and it is a way to be completely honest about who you are, about who you are with, and about where you are, and about when this is happening. So when you are open while improvising, when you are really improvising as it should be done, I think, you are open to all these influences. Internal influences and external influences are all part of the creation. So I know that improvisation is a way to be yourself, and to be yourself in the place you are, in the moment you are. So in this meaning, improvisation is similar to tradition when you belong to a tradition. If you belong to a tradition, you feel that tradition belongs to you, and you are that, and that is you.
Nice.
Just like improvisation. So I thought maybe through improvisation I could achieve this feeling of community. But I know as well that improvisation tends to be kind of fun for musicians, and sometimes boring for audience if they are not musicians, because composition has developed a big amount of tools and theories that help us to make the creation more organic, to make it work, to make it happen, to make it effective. So the good composers are normally the composers who can minimize the material and maximize the results. First lessons in composition lessons are normally okay, you have notes C and D. Make a composition with only 2 notes. And then you become a composer. So normally it is about how to develop material and how to organize material, not so much about how much material you put in.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes not even the quality of the material. Sometimes it's not as important. You can have a not so inspired, let's say, material, but if you are a good composer, you can make it happen. You can dosify that material in a way that the audience feels compelled and feels that their expectations about the material are in the game. You are playing with their expectations in an organic way, and you keep them there. So I know that normally group improvisation tends to be not so good at that, tends to be somewhat chaotic, and not as effective as in the emotional aspects to the normal audience, unless you are a musician and you get into the details of musicians. That's why most of people prefers to listen to just pop music, because pop music is a music designed to be effective. It takes advantage of all the knowledge up to date to make it effective with as few elements as possible. So I am a big fan of pop music as well, yeah, and popular music. So I thought at that point that I had the rhythmic concepts that explained to me, at least, that work for me. I have the conceptual tools to understand why this rhythm works and why this other rhythm doesn't work. It's like I know some theories that I created myself to understand rhythm in such a way that I can kind of understand why these people is dancing to that music, but they are not compelled to dance with other musics. Because of some rhythmic, really specific things. It's not just because they are drunk. Sometimes it is.
That's super interesting. That's very, very interesting. I wonder if you could share at least one of those little things that you find the fire in the music.
Yeah, of course, I would be very happy to share. It's not simple thing. It's just like harmony. I can just tell you about, but to understand, there are like many theories. I normally teach them in my school. It's called CERPS, CERPS, which is Center for Studies of Rhythm and Percussion with Science.
Awesome.
By the way, Rhythm with Science is the name of the language I created through this project I am telling. Yeah, that's the book of the language.
Okay.
And in SERPs, in my school, I am teaching the science, but also I am teaching in different courses these specific theories, which is for me more important actually than the science. So at some point, I thought I had the tools in my mind, the conceptual tools, the theoretical tools, to convert this chaotic improvisation into an organized improvisation in the same way that the folk music, the traditional rhythmic music from around the world is working. So I thought I could make a sign just as a name, as a way to name those processes, those theories, those concepts, and then ask the musicians to use those concepts to create rhythm. Of course, many of the signs in my language are just universal meanings that all of us learn in any music school or conservatory, like double time or things like that, or just change meter to 3/4 beats or to 5/4 beats or to other stuff. But some of those are really based on these personal theories or personal concepts, or some of those signs are universal concepts but I take them in this other personal way, and that's what I teach when I teach rhythm with signs. It's not about the signs, which of course is the first level of this. But I would say that the signs are just an index of concepts, and some of those concepts are very universal for rhythmic musicians, and some are more personal and I would say new concepts about rhythm that I try to share through these signs. So when I understood that I had the tools to make this group of improvised rhythmic music work, because those are rhythmic conceptual tools, I know that I can do signs to just call those tools. And then maybe I thought at that moment, that was in 2005, maybe I could create a group that does in Buenos Aires the same thing that Escola do Samba does in Rio, or Candombe group does in Montevideo, Uruguay, or an Izawa group does in Morocco, or so on. So I designed the signs really in 2 nights. The first 70 signs of my language are done in just 2 nights, because it was only just a way of create the most possible obvious hand sign for these meanings that I had very clear in my mind, these concepts. So after I called the best percussionists in town in Buenos Aires and around Buenos Aires to try to make this group happen. So we started rehearsing every Monday night, a day that of course for us musicians is normally kind of empty. We don't play normally we don't do gigs on Monday night. We are just back from the weekend tour. Maybe we are kind of tired, but not gigs. So it was a good day for rehearsing. And then also after the model of Escolas do Samba or these kind of groups, I thought that we could do open rehearsals for the audience to become involved in the process that what we were doing. So that's what we started to do, and people started to grow. And after more or less 1 month, I realized that this idea was really working and could really work in a large scale, because I thought I saw the people dancing. That was the main, for me, that was the main confirmation that it worked. I wanted the people to take the music for their own and do their own dancing or meeting and use the music for their own wills, not for my will.
That's
so
great. That's
when
great.
I saw people dancing, I thought, okay, this is working. And also I thought at some point that some big difference with percussive traditions is that normally the traditional rhythms sound in a certain way that represents the people on that tradition. But this system of signs, as any other probably sign language, it's not supposed to sound in any specific way. It's more a way to improvise, to create different kinds of sounds or rhythms or compositions. So I thought, if this game works in the way that I expect, it could work, of course, in other places as well. It's not something about Buenos Aires. It's something that could help people in Buenos Aires to get together around their own rhythms, but it could also help people from other places. So I started to think of it a little bit like a sport, like a group sport, like soccer, which is so present in Argentina and also in Brazil. And I am not really a great soccer player or not even a fan, but I am fan of the cultural matrix, the cultural net that gets created with all these kind of sports. So I thought that as just the same way that in Rio you have the carnival and there is a competition on the groups, because there is something very specific that they have to accomplish. So they can be matched to one another and they compete. Of course, in an artistic and cultural way. It's not to win the other one and to kill him or something. It's a very healthy competition, I think.
Yeah, sure.
So I thought maybe if this is a game and if this game works and if it is popular, if it helps people to get together and to dance, and if it can be more creative or less creative, if it can be more or less effective in the dance aspect, if it can be more or less effective in the original aspect, originality, to bring your own originality at the same time that making the people dance, and at the same time that representing your space, your place, your city, your country, then it can become just like a sport, a game in which you can represent your place and represent yourself and compete in a healthy way. So now we are doing this language, well, it is getting to that place. At this moment, there is about 30 countries or so with groups of percussion with sign and rhythm with sign language. And in Argentina, it has grown enormously. There is people, thousands of musicians using it. And now this year it has been the first national championship of percussion with signs, with groups coming from all Argentina and showing to all the other groups and sharing their styles and their way of doing it. And it's very, for me, it was wonderful, not only because this became real, which is enough, it's already very, very magical and wonderful thing, but also because I could learn from other groups something that they do with my own language that I didn't know. So they could play and wow, look, how do they do that? So I could learn from the conductors or the other musicians or the sections.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great, man. And it's wonderful to see how you really achieved that place of creating a worldwide community with what you created. It's really, really incredible.
It is, yeah, it's happening very fast, I say, because I know about other great languages about improvisation with signs, like Soundpainting or Conduction by Butch Morris. Mm-hmm. And they have been working with this for years and years. Really, they are pioneers on this, and I don't know very well their languages, but I can see what they are bringing to the world of music and the world of improvisation, and I admire and respect enormously that. But I can see also that there is one small but very big difference between those languages and the rhythm with sign as a game. The main difference that I can find is that rhythm with signs is aimed to work with the rhythmic aspect. Is very focused into that, and I think it's not as a big language or system as Soundpainting, let's say, because we do that in purpose. We try to keep it as simple as possible, with as few signs as possible, but be sure that every sign is completely universal, let's say. Mm-hmm. So I try to encourage conductors of my language, and I encourage myself as a conductor to train the way to train our bodies and our gestures and our technique as a conductors to be able to combine signs in a very fluent way. Mm-hmm. In such a way that with as many signs as possible, we can create as much meanings as possible. So if there is a way to create a new meaning just by combining all signs, I encourage conductors to train themselves to do that in a very simple way for the musicians, rather than inventing a new sign that is talking about that. So that we keep it as simple as possible in the graphical aspect as well. So if you have a, let's say we have this screen, right, in the Instagram.
Okay.
If we have 2,000 signs in this screen, we will not be able to differentiate clearly between them. We should put our focus very close to the signs. So we lose speed. And when we lose speed, we also lose the possibility to react to the music in real time. We have to prepare too much for the next action to take over. So if we only have 20 signs, then you can just point and you know which one is it. This means that if you have less signs, it's less chance to confuse one to the other. You can be less formal in the way that you present your message as a conductor, and it's still going to be understood. So I prefer it simple and very exchangeable, very modular language with not as many actions. Rhythm with signs at this moment has about 140 signs, which is I don't know if it is a lot or a few, but I really try to keep it as small as possible. So, for instance, in the second edition of this handbook, which I am preparing now, I am taking some signs out instead of in. Actually, I am taking some of them in as well, but trying to take out the ones that I have learned as a conductor to create the same meaning, but combining all signs. But it also takes some training as a conductors.
One of the persons who participated in these talks was that Daniela Veronese, who edited the Butch Morris book.
Yeah, I know her.
And she used a very, very nice word to represent that. She said contextual language. So Absolutely. It's a language that you can use in different ways depending on the context.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Please.
No, okay. I remember you were talking about how it's growing, this rhythm with signs practice or language so fast, which is true. I think it has to do with the thing that is related to popular music. And how it is related to popular music. Well, because it is about rhythm. And popular music, I would say, it's first about rhythm, and then about melody, and then about harmony, and very, very then about texture and other things. So I think it's making this system spread very easily in other kind of musicians, and also as a pedagogical tool or as a therapeutic tool. Of course, all improvisation is therapeutic, and it can be a pedagogical tool. But if it is related with rhythm, and if it makes it easy to play and to understand rhythm, then it's a very powerful tool for teaching, learning, and healing as well. So this is making this system to grow very fast. And then the fact that popular music is the music that 99% of musicians play, and the music that 99% of people listens to.
Yeah.
So this, of course, makes a big difference in terms of what we could call commercially as the market. It's a very, very large market compared to the erudite music or experimental music, which is more targeted, more exclusive, I would say. So the main difference for me, and what made me create this language, I could have used, let me tell you, I got into the idea of science because I watched a Butch Morris rehearsal. I was invited to play on one of his bands when he was in Buenos Aires. I couldn't play because I had other gigs and a tour, so I couldn't do the work, but I could go to one rehearsal, and of course I was blown up by the idea of conducting with science and creating your own language to tell the musicians what you need them to do in your own improvisation. At the moment I didn't use it, but after I was exploring myself some harmonic theories, but just personal stuff, just some random movement harmonies and different systems to organize random harmony and things like that. So I thought I could use then some science to train those harmony systems with a group. So I did this first group called Colectivo Heterofónico, which was not about rhythm. It was about harmony and texture, but mainly harmony. So we played for like 3 years. We did 2 CDs, and we did lots of great fun stuff for us. But after these 3 years, I felt I was lacking the tools for work with rhythm as I hear it. So I stopped with that group and with that language that I created specifically for that group. And I started to think how to approach rhythm. And it took me really many years to understand something that now I feel it's crucial for me, but I believe it is crucial to understand rhythm as well for anybody, which is that, at least in my opinion, of course, it's just one opinion, but I can say it's a fundamented opinion. It's a rhythm, I think, is not about time. I think rhythm is not the horizontal aspect of music, but I think rhythm is the circular aspect of music. It's about cycles. It's about what we feel when there is a cycle that we can recognize. And the different parts of that cycle have different feelings. And I think that rhythm is perceived with the body, and it's created with the body. But I don't say it in a metaphorical way. I say it in a completely literal way. I think if you think of that, rhythm is the only aspect of music that is produced in a one-to-one relation with the movements of your articulations and your body, according to your volume, to your will. So when you sing a note, you do da. I can tune it. Maybe I can tune 440. So it's 440 times per second, this vibration, and we recognize it as a la, as the note A, 440, right? But my act is not related to 4 times every second thinking on that, doing something. What I am doing is just releasing one note and sustaining it, and then tuning with this feeling that we call harmony. With this perfection is the perception is about tuning, but it's not about doing 440 times per second something. It's just one time, da, and sustain and tune. So when we do rhythm, what we call rhythm, normally everyone, we are doing something different. We are producing one, pa, 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 ta, 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 ta. I am moving one articulated part of my body every moment that I want to create a rhythmic event. This relation is absolutely one-to-one, and that is rhythm. The other is melody or harmony, if you have many. And when you do a longer longer thing, then you start to call it form. It's not anymore rhythm, it's more about form. Mm-hmm. So this relation with the body, that you produce rhythm with moving your body in a one-to-one relation. And also, I think we recognize rhythm. I am seeing that Benjamin is saying that rhythm is a space. I don't agree with that. I think space is proportion, but rhythm it is related with space. But I think rhythm is cycle. Everything is cycle, of course. Melody is also cycles, because you have a note, and a note is a certain cycle that is sustained for 40, for instance, or whatever, that makes us perceive a note, and it is cycle as well. But rhythm is a specific cycle. It's a cycle that relates with the size of our body. For me, rhythm is the cycles that we feel related with the size of our body in a one-to-one relation with the mobile parts. So what we call pulse, the beat, if I tell you or anyone that is watching this to make a beat that we can feel like the pulse of the music, the beat, everyone is going to do a pulse between more or less 40 BPM and 200 or 220 BPM, the fastest. Mm-hmm. So that is not by chance. This is our fundamental as a body. This is the speed that you can walk. This is the speed that our whole body as a unity can move together in a cycle, in a natural way. By walking, by running, by jumping, that's the speed of our heart pulsating to cover the whole body with its circuit vascular system, right? The sending blood to the whole body. So mainly all the process that involve the whole body in emotion are in that range from 40 or 50 per minute to 200 or 220, the maximum per minute. Mm-hmm. So that is just like a string of a guitar. You can pulsate the string, bang, and it has its own natural vibration, its own natural tuning. You can stress that, you can higher the pitch by making this body less flexible. Mm-hmm. So stretching the string, you can make it higher, but not any higher. You cannot do whatever. There is a limit on that body of the highest possible note of a string can achieve, and the lowest one before we get into no sound, just blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So wow. just the same with our bodies. We can jump as fast as we want, but up to certain limits. Yeah, you cannot jump at 400 per minute. You just cannot do it.
Yeah. So that's a great point of view. That's a very interesting point of view. Yeah, please go on.
No, so that's the fundamental in the rhythmic aspect. As just the fundamental in the theory of harmonics is the whole string. You get the fundamental, and then you get all the harmonics. Well, just the same with the body. Your whole body is the fundamental, and that is the beat. Mm-hmm. And then you have the subdivision, and the subdivision is like the harmonics in the sound. Subdivision is the speed at your other smaller articulations can move. I can do. Nobody will think that is the beat. That is the subdivision for anybody. Okay. Because you cannot jump or walk at that speed. And you cannot feel it as a pulse because it doesn't relate with your fundamental whole body. But it relates with smaller parts of your body. You can do this because it's small, because it's natural tuning. It's like a pendulum. If you have a small pendulum, it goes fast. If you have longer pendulum, it goes slower. It's just physics. So the subdivision relates with other parts of your body moving. If you walk in a beat, you will notice that your shoulders move naturally in eighth notes. That's natural tuning of your body, and that's why we perceive subdivision, because it's related with our body perception in different ways. So that's my theory about rhythm. I am being very brute, very rough, but from that point and on, I think rhythm as a cycle. And there is lots of music that is avoiding cycles because it's against their aesthetic, which I understand perfectly. And I would say, normally, we tend to think improvisation as opposite to repeating. It's like, to be awake, to be present in improvisation, you have to be flexible, and you have to let the ideas go away. You have to play them and just keep moving. You shouldn't get stuck into repetition. That for some, in some ways, it may become contrary to the idea of improvisation. So that was the first step I had to take to create this new language, which is improvisation is not necessarily against repetition, and rhythm, it is about repetition. This beginning of the concept of rhythm in my head is what brought me to understand that a language of science that talks deeply about rhythm should talk really about repetition, at least in the meaning that I give to rhythm. So I started my language with repetition on. So in Rhythm with Science, we start by repeating exactly everything that we play. It's just opposite to other systems in that respect. So once you are repeating with exact as exactly as you can, then you are starting to feel rhythm, and then you can start to manipulate rhythm through science. I could not tell a musician like different. I could tell you now different signs on my language would be, for instance, measure, 3 beats, ternary. So that's 9/8. And then I do so now we know that we are in 9/8. And then I ask someone just to do a background, and the background means something that is going to repeat in 9/8, of course, in this case. So when someone starts, I bring someone to go in 9/8, then I can tell other people to do unison. But unison is the pedagogical tool used in all traditions since the beginning of humanity. So do the same that I do. I am the teacher. Okay, just do what I do until you get it right. Not only in music. So in Rhythm with Science, unison is very specific sign. It means do a real unison, note by note, texture, dynamics, even fingering. If you are playing 2 with the right, 1 with the left, and then 2 with the right, it's not the same than doing the same phrase rhythmically, but in a different way. Definitely. So if you repeat exactly the same, then you can really do a unison. But if you don't repeat exactly the same, you cannot do a unison. So you are missing the most important learning tool in history, which is repetition and imitation. So this very simple thing, this little difference in the point of departure brings all rhythm at home. So my whole system, I would say, is really inside that little box, which is repetition. I know not all the music is inside that box, and I love other musics that is not about repetition at all. I have been very, very into other kinds of experimental musics in other moments in my life. But this system, Rhythm with Science, it is about repetition.
Yeah, Santiago, I'm speechless. It's so great, so inspiring. All you have shared, all this, yeah, it's very, very nice. And I must share with you that the first contact I had with Conducted Improvisation was through your signs, and Chaya, who is online, she invited me to participate in her group, which was Frito na Hora. Yeah. And you mentioned them in your book.
Hello, Chaya, I see you there.
And then one funny thing I just want to share with you is that I was crazy about your method, and you really didn't have a book at that time. And then I came to New York, and someone, I can't remember who, gave me a PDF of your like manuscript of Coletivo Heterofônico, and I was like digging that thing, and oh, that's great that this is happening in Latin America too. It was awesome, and I just want to share with that, because I think it's great what you did and what you are building up. So
thanks.
If I can ask at least one question, because we have only 10 minutes to go. You shared a lot already, but I would ask you, because you told everything about rhythm, about your technique, your gestures, and all of those things. But philosophically, I would like to ask you, what do you think is the role of the conductor?
When I do conducting techniques courses, we normally start with the students by just bringing like a brainstorming what we think, everybody in the room, what they are thinking and what I am thinking a conductor is for. Why would we need a conductor if we do? So normally I get to more or less these same answers all the times. That is, one way is we need, or we can use a conductor, or we can focus our conducting role as a person who is unifying somehow the direction of the music that is going to be improvised. So everybody could be a conductor, maybe everybody could have its own idea. It could be a great idea, all of them, because it's real. Mm-hmm. But of course, if we go, everybody goes in a different direction, then we don't get a group, we just get people. So a conductor as a way of unifying the direction and creating a continent, creating a path in which we can be free but still together. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also a conductor as a person who is in a privileged role, because the conductor is not playing the sound, is not playing the instruments, mm-hmm. So he can be a step forward, backwards, mm-hmm. in a privileged space to listen to the totality, and then trying to feel if the whole needs some contrast, some change, that kind of changes that are very difficult to get if we are not unified by a conduction or by a composition or by some external, let's say, stimulus. So a conductor sometimes brings the possibility to make sudden changes that could be almost impossible if everyone is conducting himself by himself. And in this way, we can create things in composition that we need as an individuals. We need to hear some contrast, but we cannot create them without centralized decisions. Mm-hmm. And then also conductors I think are very useful for recognizing problems and helping to fix problems, just as a service for musicians and for the music. So sometimes I feel myself while conducting just as a person that I am listening to the music and trying to understand what is it bringing it back, what is holding the music back, what is not allowing the music to go forward. So it's just checking, oh, okay, that instrument is out of clave. So I have these theories that I use to analyze rhythm or orchestration or other things, composition in general, and say, okay, so I think that phrase there is doing that. The whole thing is not just grooving as it should. So I take out that instrument, and if I was right, then the whole thing starts to flow in a different way. So sometimes it's just creating the conditions to the music to keep flowing.
Yeah, this definitely was another question I was asking for everyone, which was what kind of problems can you have in the stage, and how do you deal with them? You just said about them, some example, but you mentioned through all this talk, you mentioned this kind of technique of analysis, technique of looking to music. Could you at least give a
some things that I use? I normally only use those techniques or those concepts when there is a problem. I try to just be doing music, be out of any kind of analysis while I am conducting, just as while I am playing. But when there is some problem, when I detect problems, then I use my techniques. Then I go, okay, what is happening here? Okay, I think I know. So those problems many times are about, I'm talking about the rhythmic aspect now, which is the aspect in which I think I can contribute to people watching this. One is clave, is understanding how the clave works in rhythm, and what is the relation with the groove and the dancing and the feeling of that. Clave is a word that is normally referring to an Afro-Cuban concept, the 3-2 clave or 2-3, but I am not taking it in that meaning. I have my own theory of claves that I developed based on a discovery by Ramiro Musoto, a great percussionist and producer that you probably know, Argentinian, Brazilian.
Great.
And he made some, I think, great discoveries about rhythm, and I took those discoveries into a theory that I am developing I have been working on this for some, maybe 15 years now. And so I use this theory of claves to understand what is in and what is out. So this theory of claves for me is just like the functional harmony for harmony. Like, what it is dominant, what is a tonic chord, what it is a scale. And there are notes that are out of scale. It's not that when you have 12 chromatic notes, it doesn't mean that you have to use the 12 notes. Sure. You have to use the ones that sound good for you. And sometimes there are, let's say, rules or systems that explains us why some of the notes sound good and why some of the other notes doesn't sound good in some context. That theory is harmony, the theory of harmony. And there are many theories of harmony. So I think there are not as many theories of rhythm, really. It is tools that have not been developed yet because of some historical reasons. So that's what I am doing. I'm trying to develop rhythmic theories that explain reality, why this sounds good and why this doesn't sound good. So one is claves, and another one is the balance between many different aspects, the balance between clave and out of clave, the balance between downbeat and upbeat, the balance between long and short cycles, the balance between kinds of quantization and how do that relate with our body parts, balance of course, pitch, high and low, balance of timbre, balance of waveforms like square waveform, sinusoidal waveform, etc. Balance of tempos, balance of neat ideas or ornamented ideas, balance of monophonic or homophonic or monodic or polyphonic, balance of heterophonic and polyphonic, many different really aspects that makes us dance not only in the physical aspect but also in our perception. Our perception is dancing, and the composer or the improviser is playing with the perception, playing with the expectation of something that is going to happen, and maybe it doesn't happen, or maybe it happens, or maybe it happens but with some variations that bring some new expectations to the game in a different level. So all these things are happening simultaneously, and all those things are the things that I am taking care of while I am conducting or while I am composing.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's wonderful. It sounds to me like a fractal equilibrium, you know, something that related to, you know, cycles, but at the same time in the fractal way of scales, and all you are talking about equilibrium. Yes,
Yeah,
Santiago.
I
Thank you
think
so
so.
much.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
No. Go on. You have
No,
2 more minutes.
sometimes I imagine composition or improvising and conducting improvisation is a way of doing both things at the same time. I feel that music is alive when their components are in balance, just like a mobile, like a Calder mobile, you know. The mobile can have few elements, maybe only 3 elements, and they are in equilibrium, and that is what makes a mobile a mobile. It can have 200 elements. If they are in equilibrium and they are moving, it is a mobile. But if they are out of balance and they are just bloop, then it's not anymore a mobile.
Sure.
But that's the same if you have 3 elements, or if you have 20, or if you have 2,000 elements. And it is also the same if the elements are beautiful or are ugly. Maybe your element is very simple, it's just a square. Or maybe your element is a whale. Or maybe your element is a scale. Or maybe your element is a whole symphony. But it has to be in balance with the other elements.
Yeah.
Not only in the weight aspect, but also on the visual aspect, the colors, the weight, the shapes, the texture, the how to relate with light. So all that makes a beautiful mobile. So there are thousands of levels of equilibrium that are working simultaneously. And the important part for me is that equilibrium, not the things, really.
Yeah. Yes, Santiago. I'm astonished, and thank you so much for everything you said. Thank you for participating in this.